Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Dina Tauriello. She was on another podcast that I had a while ago, but we're going to be talking strictly about drums today. And I'm so glad to talk to her because she has a lot of great things to say. Welcome, Dina.
Thank you, Clayton. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How's things been going at Little Shop of Horrors?
Everything has been wonderful. Everybody has been healthy and people are showing up and we're selling out and we're having a blast. It's good to be
What's
back to work.
what's the name of the theater that it's playing again?
We are at the West Side Theater, which is 43rd and Ninth.
Aha. I think I saw a show there. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a play about dating. And I went with my girlfriend, and we had a really good time because they were like, it was like kind of an interactive thing. But anyway, it's a nice theater, and I wish that you run for many, many decades.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to stay there for decades, but
We'll take it month by month. We'll hope for the best. These trying times. We'll just, month by month is good.
yes, there you go. Well, many decades ago, you started playing drums.
I did.
What was the first thing that made you say, you know what, I want to play drums?
Karen Carpenter.
And you saw her on TV, or where'd you see her?
I I don't remember exactly how I came to know that she was a drummer. My parents were music fans, and they had an array of 8-track tapes, just to give you, a clue on how far back we go on this. And the Carpenters were in the repertoire, and I fell in love with Karen's voice and the music, and somehow came to learn that she was a drummer. And after harassing my mother, God rest her soul, she managed to get tickets for us to go see them live. And during the concert, she, always did a bit during the show where she'd be featured on drums. Early on in their career, when they first broke, she would be on drums the whole show, and she sang from behind the drums, and that was that. And then management decided they needed her to be a front person and really get her out front to sort of lead the show. So she would only be featured for a little bit during the concert from that point on. So, but I just remembered being blown away and having the aha moment sitting in the audience. I think I was all of 7 years old, and I went, that's what I want to do. And I actually was fortunate enough to get backstage and meet them as well. So she really had a tremendous impact on me. She was as lovely and wonderful as she was talented, and really she single-handedly changed my life. That was all Karen.
Wow. Did you start taking lessons shortly thereafter?
When I was 8, yep.
Did you start out on a pad like many people did back then?
I sure did. For months and months and months. My drum teacher wouldn't let me anywhere near a drum set. He wanted
Same
to,
with me.
yeah, old school, right?
Yeah.
None of that.
Was the pad at an angle? Did you play traditional grip?
I did. There's a little block of wood with rubber on it,
Yes.
and it was angled. Yeah, that's so yes, that's how that started. He wouldn't let me anywhere near a drum kit, and I think it was, unlike our immediate gratification society of today, where, as a teacher, over the years, kids want to, they want to get right on the kit and they want to play this song and that song, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. Let's work on your fulcrum and your grip and make sure you're cool and focus a little bit on technique before you hop on those drums. But I think for me, because of my age, I think he wanted to be sure that I was really going to be committed and really into it before my parents invested in a drum set and, all that kind of stuff. So lo and behold, they finally did, and that was that.
And your first drum set was?
A Silver Sparkle Slingerland. Unbeknownst to me at the time when I got it, Karen also played a Silver Sparkle. She was a Ludwig artist, but I ended up with the Slings, and I believe they are a 1967 variety. They're amazing, and I still have them, of course.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you you were playing in, I guess, junior high school? Or is that then you went into high school playing with different bands, or did you play in like an ensemble?
I did sort of an array of the school stuff. In grammar school, I did regular, school band, orchestral stuff. my school had a, why am I blanking on it? Oh, Lordy Lord. Um, they had just a smaller ensemble with, strings and, selected instrumentalists. So I was part of that. And they didn't have any kind of a jazz band thing, so I didn't get to participate in that at any point. But by the time I got to high school, uh, I did ninth grade in school band, and I don't know, I felt like I was reading the same music that I started when I was in fourth grade. It never got really that much more challenging for me. It was kind of the same thing year after year after year. And I just honestly kind of got bored with it and was already playing in garage bands at that point and starting to do gigs and things like that around town and whatnot. So my interest kind of went to the rock, cover band thing, and I phased out of the school situation.
Was it do you remember some of the covers that you were doing back then, and what bands
Oh
you were
yeah, oh
emulating?
yeah. We did White Room by Cream. We did Steppenwolf, Born to Be Wild. I believe there was a little Stones in there, some Jumpin' Jack Flash. Um,
No Carpenters.
no, no Carpenters.
Some
No,
Jumpin' Jack
some
Flash to
some Hendrix. Yeah, some Close to You. No, it didn't quite go like that. Well, I sure as heck wasn't going to sing, so
Do you not sing?
not particularly well. I don't think anybody wants to hear me sing, but
Yeah, my kids remind me that I can't sing. So,
I mean, I'm okay, but I'm no lead vocalist, and I'm no Karen, that's for sure. So
did
okay.
you ever sing in any bands that you played with?
I did some backing vocals a little bit in a couple of bands, but and actually some of the cover bands that I was in years ago, I did lead on a couple songs. Yeah,
So you're
but
playing in cover bands back in high school. What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in Montville, New Jersey, not Montvale. Montvale is Bergen County. Montville is Morris County. So about a half hour outside of Manhattan.
Did you ever think of playing in marching bands back in high school?
I did. My big conflict was that I was also a jock. So I was a three-sport varsity athlete in high
Wow,
school and
didn't know that.
went to college on a partial softball scholarship at Penn State. So I sort of had the split screen world of jock and musician. So they kind of collided occasionally, and I I kind of I think favored the athletic side a little bit more in my younger years in terms of making some of those decisions, like not being able to play in the pit, for the high school production of whatever show because I had softball and I couldn't juggle both. So I kind of went the way of sports, thinking that I might hopefully get a scholarship, or that was part of the goal. So that's kind of where it landed.
All right. Excuse me. We're going to go off on a tangent here.
Uh-oh.
Softball.
Yeah.
Over the summer, I went to, I forgot where it was, but it was about an hour north of New York City because we wanted to get out of town. And we ran across I guess I don't know if it was Little League girls softball. And just watching them play and watching them pitch, I was like, oh my God, this ball is going so fast. I mean, that's just Little League. I'd be scared to death being up there. I can imagine high school and college.
Yeah,
Now,
it's intense. When
so
when when I played, they've since changed this to softball in its original fast pitch softball in its original form was very different from baseball. Baseball is very, you know, home run oriented, run production oriented, and softball was really about precision. It was about, one run games, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, and everything mattered. You had to be able to execute a bunt to move a runner, and it was like all of that perfectly precise execution, discipline, and things were happening at warp speed. So when I was playing in college, the pitching mound was 40 feet. It's now 43, but girls were throwing upper 60s, low 70s, which equates to, in terms of reaction time, well over 100 miles an hour at baseball. So the reaction time and pitchers are throwing rise balls, drops, drop curves, change ups, screwballs. So you get an array of movement, an array of planes coming at you at like light speed. So it was really awesome. It was a great game. I loved it. Really loved it.
So, excuse me. Again, we're going deep into softball here.
Tangents, yeah, deep dive.
Well, getting to drumming, I just find this fascinating. Since you know so much more about it than I do, the length of the distance between the home plate and the pitcher's mound, I never could. Again, I don't know all this stuff, but if it's shorter and you're throwing at 60 miles an hour, it's equivalent to, you know, a guy throwing from further away at 90 miles an hour, or you said the reaction time.
Yeah, so it would be the equivalent from in my day and age at 40 feet at the speeds that they were throwing then would be the equivalent of a baseball player at 62 and change, whatever the pitching mound is in baseball, 62 feet and inches, would be the equivalent of a baseball player throwing, I think it was like 110 or 105, so like stuff that you don't see in baseball. So it was pretty bananas.
That's crazy.
Yes. Yes. I played against, in my summer league, I played against girls that went on to be on the Olympic team. So it was like that kind of crazy competitive, high level insanity. And it was very challenging and awesome.
All right. Excuse me. Getting back on the drum road. Well, what made you
Rant over.
edit? No, I'm not going to edit this. I might, but I find this
It's okay.
fascinating.
You can free, feel free.
No, this is all part
Dealer's
of
choice,
It's all part of your life story. So you were, the dual track of athletics and drumming, and you eventually chose drumming. You went to, did you go to Penn State on a scholarship?
I did.
Oh, really?
I did.
And it was on a softball scholarship. What made you stop playing? Not an injury, please. Don't tell me that.
Oh, well, I mean, I played I played 4 years of college, and then I played a couple of years after college. And the team that I had been playing on, the summer team that I mentioned, playing against the Olympic level people, my coach stopped running the team. The team folded. And I loved that team, and that's who I wanted to play for. And I didn't play the following summer and gotten picked up by another local team because you can expand your roster when you get to the nationals and all that stuff. And I got picked up to go to nationals. And that was the last time I played competitively. Since then, I mean, long after, I did have a rotator cuff injury to my right shoulder, and I have some screws and metal and things, keeping this together. So it's really hard for me to throw like I used to throw. It gives me trouble. So that officially put an end to any hopes I had of coming out of retirement. I didn't really, but I just, there's no huge life for softball after college. There's, some pro stuff here and there, but it was long after. I was too old at that point, so.
Did you pitch? What position?
I pitched in high school a little bit, but I was primarily a third baseman. That was really, I kind of played a lot of different positions wherever the team needed me. So my freshman year, I platooned at first base and third base. Sophomore year, I played second base. I caught a couple of innings in my junior season, but junior and senior year, I was at third base. And that's where I liked that the best and had the most success there.
Do you have like a top 5 softball players that you looked up to or still look up to?
I don't know if I could give you a top 5, but Lisa Fernandez was definitely a favorite of mine. Dot Richardson, definitely a favorite of mine. Those are my 2 favorites. Yeah.
So in Penn State, did you play drums?
Only when I came home. I didn't study music there. Yeah. That's the big regret for me. That if I had to start listing regrets, that would be a regret. I wish I had a do-over on that one. I would still go to Penn State, but I would have pursued music. Again, the marching band thing. Yeah, I knew that you had to do at least 1 year of marching band, and I was afraid that it would, because Division I sports are year-round essentially. So I knew that I have a fall season, and it would interfere, and I sort of let that scare me off instead of really trying to work it out and kind of deep dive and see if I could come up with a compromise or figure out a way to manage it. And I just kind of let it scare me off. So that was a regret for me for sure.
Now, why Penn State and not Iowa or Wisconsin? Or, I don't know the top softball schools, but why Penn State?
I really love the campus. I love the focus on academics with a really strong athletic emphasis. We have obviously a very competitive sports program across the board. And I wanted to go to a big school and I wanted to be challenged athletically and academically. And I just felt like it was a really good fit for me.
Did you go to many of the football games?
Oh, yeah. I
Is
sure
it the
did.
Nittany Lions?
Nittany Lions.
Now, what is a
Yep.
Nittany Lion?
There's a mountain range nearby that's called Mountain Nittany. So their mascot became, and they say it sort of looks like a lion. The landscape of the mountain range looks like a lion, so it became the Nittany Lions.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you still watch the softball team on TV, or do you not follow them anymore?
If they're on TV, they usually aren't because we're not one of the top. Sadly, we're not one of the top programs in the country. We're competitive, but not competitive enough that we're going to be on TV. But they have alumni weekends and things like that. And when I can go, I go back and see my teammates and check in on things.
So you didn't play much at all. Only when you came back, did you play go play in any bands when you were back in town, or did you just play for fun on your own in practice?
I just played for fun on my own when I come home. And then I didn't really start playing out in the world until after I graduated and moved back. Then I kind of got back into things and, kind of went on my way.
And you said as soon as you got done with college, you were like, you know what, I want to play musicals.
Well, actually, as a kid, I wanted to play musicals. So
Really?
it's not, yeah, my mom was she was a Broadway aficionada. She saw tons of shows. And I have stacks of her playbills from the shows that she'd seen over the years. And she used to bring us in. My parents split when I was 10, and it became something that she would do for us. Money was usually pretty tight in my house. We didn't have an abundance of cash flow. And she would manage, once or twice a year or whenever she could do it, or if the right show came along that she thought would be good for us to see, she would take us in and we'd go to lunch and we'd go see a show. And yeah, that was pretty life-changing for me too, kind of up there with, first was Karen, and then a couple years later was, seeing my first show.
And what was the show that you liked the most?
That's a tough one. I've seen a lot of shows over the year that I've really loved, but I think the one that had the most impact on me was a show called They're Playing Our Song with Lucy Arnaz and Robert Klein, and Michael Keller was the drummer.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I was able to share with him this story of, we had front row center orchestra seats, and I was looking over into the pit, watching the drummer like warm up and sitting behind the kit and whatever, and thinking, wow, I'd love to do that. That's so cool. And it was Keller. Isn't that crazy?
For those that don't know Michael Keller, he's one of the contractors that hires musicians for Broadway shows. And he hired me for Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, and hired many, many other people. He's a great guy, great drummer, and overall just great person.
Absolutely.
So,
I got to sit with him when I was doing Head Over Heels. He was overseeing our orchestra rehearsals. So I got to meet him and, kind of eventually get to this storytelling with him. And he was like, that was me, right? I was like, what?
wow.
It was kind of it was crazy, but yes. So my interest in Broadway started way back. And ironically enough, the first thing I did when I moved back home from college, my neighbor down the street was a really active piano player in the community. She played for the church in town, and she used to play. There was a theater, I think it was on the other side of our town that I'd never been to. But she was really involved in a lot of things. And she called me up and she said, "You're home for good now, right? You're back from school?" "Yeah, I'm back. I'm doing the show at the Rockaway Town Square Playhouse called Dames at Sea, and we could really use someone to play percussion. You want to come out? You want to come do it?" I was like, "Yeah, great." I'm like, "I haven't read in a couple of years. Can I take a look at the?" I was like all nervous about reading charts and stuff, and I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool, I got this." So that was the first thing I did when I moved home from school, was actually play a show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I always thought, just from my brief interactions in the past, I always thought you wanted to be a rock star.
I did. I wanted both. Both were very appealing to me. So I kind of had this dual vision of both things. But yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, with my exposure being, Karen Carpenter, seeing Karen Carpenter on stage, I had visions of being a rock star. I always wanted to play Madison Square Garden and, all that kind of stuff. But then a few years later, being introduced to Broadway musicals, I definitely had that bug as well. That was always, present in my brain.
I can't remember if you did or didn't. Did you ever get a chance to play Madison Square Garden?
I did not. I did not. My band opened 3 shows for the Rolling Stones, and none of them were at the Garden, unfortunately. 2 were in Chicago.
Wow.
And 1 was in Baltimore. So
right. We'll get to that.
No Garden for us.
We'll get to that stuff in a minute. But you got back after Penn State started playing in a musical, and after that, you were also, I'm assuming you were playing in different original bands back at that point, or how did you get involved in other things?
My first segue from post local theater show was one of my best friends from high school, who I just found out, side note, found out a few weeks ago, she passed away tragically. So I'm still like a little moved and shaken by this whole thing, but it was because of Gretchen. She called me. She was a phenomenal singer, absolutely phenomenal. And she said, "Hey, my band needs a drummer. Come down and audition." I was like, "Okay, cool." Another cover band. I always joke that New Jersey is like the cover band capital of the world. It's like, I don't know why. Every bar has cover bands, and it's hard to find original, like a good original thing happening, select bars here and there, but it's really predominantly cover bands. So another reason to hate New Jersey, for all you Jersey haters out there. So I went down and auditioned and got into this band and, played originals locally. And we were doing an outdoor thing. I want to say it was like Memorial Day weekend or something. It was an outdoor concert in a park kind of a thing. And there were multiple bands on the lineup, on the bill. And the band that was playing after us was an original band. And they had a drummer who was just kind of filling in for them. They were looking for somebody permanent. And they saw me play with this band, and they approached me and they asked me to join that band. And then I started working with them, and we did stuff in New Jersey, but also in the city. So that began my, having to drive into Manhattan with all my crap and load in before most of these places got smart and got, decent backlines, right? So I'm driving in and schlepping my drums and, doing these gigs around town. And as it often happens, one thing leads to another, and then into another really high profile cover band in New Jersey, and playing some of the really big Jersey Shore clubs and all that stuff in front of like 3,000 people and all that craziness. And then from the bass player in that band happened to be at that time in Antigone Rising. And they were switching gears, and she got me to, get in for an audition with that band. And then I spent 20 years with Antigone Rising. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of that little trail post-college.
So tell me about Antigone Rising. They were around before you joined them, and did you know about them before?
I did. I only because of my bass player, always talked about them and how great they were. And then I started kind of keeping an ear out and was seeking them out. I would go see them occasionally in Manhattan, and then they won a contest, and they had an opening slot at Jones Beach for one of the years that Lilith Fair, was in existence with Sarah McLachlan and all that. So they were an all-female rock band, essentially classic rock influenced. But yeah, they formed The two sisters who started the band formed the band. They both went to Bucknell University, and the band formed out of Bucknell. And as many bands do, they went through some lineup changes and such. And I finally joined. I entered the picture in late 1998 and was with them for 20 years up until I got called for my first show. So that was, I segued away from them and to Broadway. He says.
I'm taking this all in. So you joined Antigone Rising and you worked with them for 20 years. You did all kinds of things, touring in vans, playing in small venues, large venues. You recorded on some records, I'm assuming?
Yes, we made lots of records. We were signed. We had a record deal and, did that dance for a few years. And had some great opening slots and did some bus tours and, fly dates and TV appearances and sort of ran the gamut with all of that stuff. Our affectionate, the catchphrase that we would use affectionately amongst ourselves is pockets full of memories, because we weren't like rolling in dough, but we had pockets full of memories. So
all right, give me one of those pockets of like reach into one of those pockets. Give me one of the. I'm going to ask you two things. Give me one of the worst memories of those 20 years. Things that you like. I can't believe that happened.
Well, perhaps under the category of dumbest thing we've ever done. Well, we had two moments like this. We were just so committed to trying to make it work and to make things happen for ourselves that we just wouldn't say no. So we had a gig in Albany, New York, and the next day we had a 6:00 load in like Greensboro, North Carolina. Yes, we slept for 3 hours. We joke about the Motel 87 off of the thruway that we slept in that we still joke about. We call it like a paper clip lock, chain lock on the door. It was like, why bother? Because it was as sturdy as a paper clip. And there were like all these sketchy people in the parking lot and I don't know what was happening. So we slept for 3 hours and we jumped in the van and we went. And usually I can always rally. I'm like, I'd be sound asleep and whoever was driving would be like, I'm tired, I need you to drive. And I would just wake up and be like, I'm good, just get me coffee, I'll drive, whatever. And that morning I was just done, I couldn't do it. And Kristin, who was least likely to be able to rally, was like blasting Berlin's first album. And we just like blasted down the highway and we rolled in. I think we pulled in at like 5:55. But we got there and we did a similar thing. We were in Philly and then we had to drive to Rhode Island to catch a ferry to play Block Island to open for the pop duo Evan and Jaron, the one hit wonder, pop duo on Block Island. And we had to catch like a 7 a.m. ferry or 7:30 ferry to get the van and the trailer and all the gear over to, we just did the most insane things. We were just idiots.
Would you do it again if you were?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. I would do every minute of that again. It was amazing.
That's cool.
It's a younger person's game for sure. I couldn't do a lot of what we did now 20 years later because it's hard. It's,
yes,
sleeping on benches and, Kristin, my bandmate would always, when we'd be on these excruciatingly long van rides, she would just say, she'd look at me and go, I just want to like unscrew my legs and take them off because I can't get comfortable on these benches. It was just painful. It was really painful, but it was incredible. All the stuff we did and just being fearless and just not taking no for an answer and just doing it, just getting out there and doing it. It was incredible.
All right, let's reach into the other pocket. Best memory. One of the best memories of playing with Antigone Rising was.
All right, I've got two. We were opening for Aerosmith at the PNC Arts Center here in New Jersey, and they were running really late with their sound check. So we were like, let's just not sit in the dressing room and waste time. Let's just go hang out backstage so that as soon as they're done, we can get on and, make this happen. So we were hanging out behind the stage and Steven Tyler could totally see us. So he catches our eye and he's like kind of looking at us, and they finish their sound check, and he puts his mic down and looked, and from like across the stage was like, "Hey, the girl band." And he comes running over to us and he's like hugging us, and hey, I had a really great old school Pretenders concert shirt on. He's like, "Oh, I love that shirt. Great hair." You know, he's hugging. "Can I get a picture with you girls?" I was like, what the hell is happening right now? It was just so awesome.
Wow,
And then
that's
the
cool.
other memory was with the Stones. We were we crossed by them backstage. I think maybe we had just come off from doing sound check or something, and they were going on or whatever it was. And we walked by them in the hallway. Mick wasn't there. It was the rest of the guys. And Keith Richards pushes his glasses down to the the end of his nose, and he mumbled something that none of us could even begin to tell you what he said. It was picture Keith Richards, and it's exactly what you would imagine. He was just like yummy, and looking at the girl band, and he goes and he walks
Wow.
away. We were just like, what the hell was that? It was really awesome.
Yummy, that's funny.
Yummy. I mean, I would have been really insulted if it just wasn't Keith Richards. It just was so hysterical. I just was like, okay, whatever. It's classic. It was great.
So did you stay on did you watch them from the wings, or did you
Yeah. Yeah.
really? Must have been cool.
Yeah. And Aerosmith too. It was awesome. And the Allman Brothers. And they actually they came up to us by like the second or third night. The first night we played with them, we did 4 or 5 shows with them. The first night they were nowhere to be found. The second night, I guess word got back to them from the crew that we could actually play, and we were like pretty rocking. And then by the third night, they stuck around to watch our show. And then the fourth night, they wanted in and they wanted to play with us. So they came up
Wow.
and actually jammed with us on stage, which was really amazing. And even Greg came out and played keys. It was really cool. So
So
those are
kids,
those are my three.
so kids, go out, get in the van, travel from Albany to North Carolina. Do
Be
it.
stupid. No. I mean, there is something to be said about paying your dues, right? And we learned
That's
a
true.
lot. We became a great band. We learned how to function and listen, and just be able to work together musically. And there's no better training ground than that. Truly, it was incredible.
Would you have? I guess that's. Trying to think of another question regarding that stuff. But anyway, I don't want to digress and go off on a tangent again. So you did Antigone Rising. You played with them for 20 years. Played on a few different records. Do you have a favorite record that you played on? Like if you were to say, you know what, this is pretty representational. Is that the right word? This album represents some of my best drumming. Which would that be?
Well, tough question. Some of our stuff was self-produced and self-released pre-record label. I kind of like some of the stuff I did on the last of those records called Rock Album, which Mick Rock actually did the photos for. So again, another like RIP moment to Mick Rock, brilliant photographer for those who don't know. And we went to the studio in Staten Island and we did a bunch of shots. And one of the reasons why we named the record Rock Album was Mick Rock did the photos, but more importantly, people didn't get that we were a rock band. So it was kind of like Rock Album. Here you go. Here's rock music. Have at it. So some of the stuff on there I'm fond of. It's raw and it's young, but I listen to it now and it makes me smile. Like I'm pretty happy with some of that stuff. From the Ground Up, which was our only label release, was done to be released in conjunction, to be released in Starbucks, even though it was released on our label. The first wave of distribution was for Starbucks only. So we sold like 250,000 copies of a record by sitting in Starbucks coffee shops across the country. And it was done live in Sony Studios, and it was done intentionally us stripped down, done like a coffee house record. So it's more acoustic. It's not as rocking, so to speak. No electric guitars or any of that kind of stuff. So for that reason, it's a little not representative because it's not a true rock record, but it's a really beautiful record, and I'm very proud of that as well. So I would say, and then we had a lineup change. We kind of split and reformed and whatever years, after the original wave. And the first record we did with the new incarnation of the band called 23 Red, I'm proud of the drumming on that record. So either any of those three, they're all different. Each are different. So you kind of get a smattering of stuff if you were to drop a needle, so to speak, on any of those three.
You said drop a needle. Talking about
I know.
eight tracks, dropping a needle.
I know. I can't. I'm old school. I can't help it. Don't judge.
You put the cassette in and you just fast forward.
No, I can't. I can't do cassettes.
Well, you can stream it.
Right. We are on iTunes and Spot and all that stuff. So yes, you can find it out there in the world. We're all over that and YouTube and whatever. So yes. Wise guy.
Is the band still around?
They are. They're working as a trio right now. They're staying busy. They just did the Melissa Etheridge cruise. They're just coming off of that. And they have a nonprofit organization called Girls Rising, and they're doing incredible work. And we're still in touch, and we're on great terms. And, we keep talking about getting me, back in for a show here or there to, sit in with them again. And we'll see if that materializes this coming year. So hopefully it will, because I miss my girls and I have a great time with them. So hopefully we can make it happen.
After Antigone Rising, you got into New York City playing shows.
I did.
What was the first show that you were on?
A show called Head Over Heels, which
Tell me about
opened
that.
in 2018. And it was all the music of the Go-Go's. The story had nothing to do with the Go-Go's. They used the Go-Go's music to tell the story, which many jukebox musicals do that. And they were looking for, since it was the music of the Go-Go's, they wanted, I guess, to be authentic in what the pit looked like, and they wanted an all-female pit. And that's how I got called. They wanted someone who had, I guess, the right experience and the right feel and flavor to play a book like that. And based upon what I've just, vomited all over your podcast as far as my experience and, all that stuff.
You took it out of your pockets. That's what the pockets.
That's right.
What's it called? Pockets.
I emptied my pockets. That's correct. You get the feel for the, my rock pedigree or my rock experience and love of it and all of that stuff. So,
well,
I ended up getting the call.
Before you go on with that, with Antigone Rising, did the band ever get pigeonholed where they wanted you to play with other female rock bands, which I guess there aren't very many? Did you ever play with the Go-Go's, like open up for the Go-Go's or anything?
We opened for the Bangles.
Okay.
We never got to open for the Go-Go's, but we opened for the Bangles. It was an interesting thing. It was really a struggle for us through all of our years of touring, particularly as a young band, with not a lot of marquee value, right out of the gates. We didn't have a deal, we were just grassroots, we were touring and traveling and trying to sell merch and get our name out there. So any of the promoters who booked us, it just makes me laugh. It was infuriating actually, but looking back on it, it makes us all laugh that somehow like girl music is a genre of music. Just because you're female, you belong on the same bill together. So they would put any female opener for us. It could have been like a bluegrass, it could have been country, it could have been folk, it could have been, didn't matter. Just because you're a female, like that was the logical opener. And we're like, can you put us on a bill with a rock band? It doesn't need to be like, we're a rock band. Put us on a bill with another rock band. That's going to help us grow our audience. If you're putting us with similar style of music, that's, hey, we like this band, we like that band. Great, that'll help us grow our fan base. It was like pulling teeth to make it happen. So So yes, we were always on, and that became our joke. We're on like girly night, it was girly night everywhere we went. And it was just so frustrating. But
Well,
yeah.
speaking of frustration, I'm going to share, or you're going to share something
Oh, I
that
am.
if you don't mind. You were going to do it, whether you like it or not. Anyway, uh, I'd like you to share a
Uh-huh.
story that you shared on another podcast that I had
Mm-hmm.
about the the sexism that you experienced during this time that a lot of people didn't even think was sexist, but if when you explain it, you're like, I can't believe you just did that. Like, for instance, there was one thing you told me about. I mean, you can explain it better than I did, but I guess you were all showing up and they were like, they thought that you were there for something else, or it's like you, like
Oh, no, no.
what
I think it was I think it was as simple as so many stories. We loaded in, and I think you may have gotten the gist by the things I've already shared with you, that we were idiots, and sometimes we were driving really long distances to get to whatever gig we had the next day. So we'd be exhausted and probably underslept and underfed and under caffeinated and underhydrated and under everything. And we roll into this club for sound check, and I remember asking the sound man if we could please have some water because we'd been traveling all day, and he was like, no. So we get on stage to do our sound, and this is what it was like for us pretty much every day that we would do sound check. It was like we had to do two shows. We had to do the sound check, so we had to not only perform well for the sound check. I mean, it really was sort of a version of singing for your supper. And we had to look good for the sound check, even though we were driving all day and felt like crap and looked like probably a bunch of hags, but we were exhausted. So before we rolled in, we'd put the makeup on and do the thing and make sure we looked okay, and like had to look like a rock band. So we'd go in there, no water. Okay, we get on stage, we set up. Our lead singer just looked at us and gave us the look, like, bring it, bitches. And we just blasted into our sound check and just blew the doors off the place. And we finished, and then the guy was like, oh, you guys need water? Here's menus. You want to order some food? You want to blah, blah, blah. It was just like, really? Okay. So they assume that we can't play our instruments. We were in a club in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a patron of the club who saw us, and other artists used to joke and were like, you guys are so intimidating. You look like a gang, because there were 5 of us. And we dressed similarly, classic rock influenced, whatever. Like, we were tough rocker girls, one would think in looking at us, right? So the guy was like, oh, you're an all-female band. What are you guys, like Josie and the Pussycats? I
Wow.
was like, yeah, we're a cartoon. That's exactly what we're like. You nailed it. I'm like, what does that mean? Are you like Josie and the Pussycats? So yeah, it was kind of like, that was sort of the thing. But yeah, good
Damn.
times.
That's one of the bad pockets of
You know what? It isn't. It just was what it was, and it was just one of the things that pulled us together more and rallied us and made us more motivated to prove to everyone that we were capable and we were a good band and we deserved to be on a bill. That we could play our instruments, we could write great freaking songs, and we were going to put on a show, a really great show. And I've got friends of mine, people in the industry who have seen tons of shows, and my one friend Bobby will always say to me, he's like, my 2 favorite live bands, Green Day and Antigone Rising. He was like, that was it, period. Like, you're one of the best live bands I've ever seen. And he's a sound man, and he mixes live bands for a living and has run the gamut. We had that reputation, and doing 260 shows a year, you're going to get that reputation. You're going to build it, and you're going to get good at what you do. So in that kind of adversity, just makes you stronger. It's not, we didn't really think that much of it. It was annoying, but it was totally fine.
definitely builds character.
Yep.
260 shows a year?
Yeah, for like 3 years, we ran that clip. I
That's a
told you, we were
lot.
crazy. We were crazy.
Well, now you can do 8 shows a week. No problem.
Right. Without having to crawl out of a van. I just, step off the ferry. It's amazing. A whole new
So
world.
you wind up getting the gig at Head Over Heels, and your experience doing Broadway, was it something that you were like, oh my God, what do I do next? Or how do I do this? Or was it something that you were somewhat prepared for based on what you did in the past? Or how did you handle getting such a gig like that?
Well, I talked to, everyone I knew who was doing it at the time for any pearls of wisdom that they could offer, knowing that, I hadn't had any experience really doing this. My dames at sea at Rockaway Town Square Playhouse didn't exactly prepare me for this. So, you know, good starting point when you're 22, but not exactly the preparation one would hope for in getting their first Broadway chair. But I, I don't know. I trusted that my experience and particularly, in that genre of music would be the thing that would get me through, and my ability to listen and my ability to work well with others and follow direction and keep my mouth shut and just keep my eyes open and my ears open and pay attention and, you know, play well with others and, all the requisite qualities of being part of a Broadway production. I sort of trusted the process, so to speak. And some of my friends who'd been doing it for a long time were really big proponents of the idea that the best Broadway players come from that world of having toured and having worked elsewhere to kind of get your chops and get your feet wet and know how to be in a band, before stepping into that arena. So again, I trusted that I was prepared in that way, even though I didn't have any experience in theater proper.
How long did that run?
Not long enough. It was such a great show and so much fun, but about 8 months.
Did any of the Go-Go's come and see
They
your?
did, yeah, they did. They were they were present several times, and actually we did a promo thing during, I don't know if it was still during previews, might have been at the end of previews, just prior to opening, where we finished the show and the Go-Go's actually performed, and Gina Shock couldn't be there, so I played drums with the Go-Go's for the
Oh,
for
that's
the two.
cool.
I think it was two songs or three songs. I think it was two at the end of the when the show was over.
Did you
So
ever
that was
get a
fun.
chance to meet Gina?
I did. Yep, and I actually interviewed her. I did a feature on her for Modern Drummer magazine, so I interviewed her, and we spent a couple hours on the phone chatting, and you know, yes,
Oh man, that's cool.
yeah, it was really cool.
Hmm. Tell you when that.
And
Go
they
ahead.
were just inducted, as some of you might know, they were just inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame, and the Head Over Heels playbill is in the Rock Hall, so that was kind of cool.
That's great. Did you? Obviously, you played on the cast recording.
Yeah,
Aha.
yes,
Looking back, it was you said 8 months.
yeah.
Um, in your experience, when did you have many subs come in to sub for you during that time?
I had three subs that I was carrying, so that was it for me. I intended to work as much as I could, and I didn't want, I didn't have I didn't have a tour on the books or anything that was going to have me out of town for any great length of time. I had a few fly dates here and there, and some freelance work, but nothing, you know, crazy that I needed a lot of subs at my disposal. So I thought three was manageable to keep them working and to, not take off a lot.
What were you looking for when you were hiring those subs? What qualities?
Um, well, I am a big believer, for me personally, in trying to pay it forward. People were very kind to me and letting me come watch when I was asking around town, prior prior to Head Over Heels even coming into the picture for me. I had started poking around and asking friends of mine who I knew to sit and watch them, watch the book and kind of get a flavor for what things were like in a Broadway pit, and was hoping to get some opportunities to sub, none of which ever came to fruition. But I had sort of put my feelers out for that, and those people were really gracious with their time and allowing me to come into their space. And I know what it felt like for me as an outsider to the Broadway community at the time that I got head over heels to be given that opportunity. It meant everything to me. And I try to bring in subs when I do a show who are trying to break in and who are looking to kind of get in. So I did that with one of my subs. I just wanted people who were capable and who I thought had, the right personality and, meaning all the things I mentioned before, could play well with others and, could take direction from the MD and, could be good students because you're going to get notes and you're going to, be asked to do things that maybe you weren't doing and you need to be able to make adjustments and do all that stuff. And people whose skill set kind of fit the book. So, there was a request initially for the subs to be female because at the end of Head Over Heels, the band was on a platform and they're behind a scrim and it raised. And then all of a sudden, there's a female band. Oh, look, kind of a thing, like the Go-Go's, but not the Go-Go's. And so, the director, I think, was partial to the idea of all female subs, but, in the spirit of doing right by the show and being inclusive and all the things that we all look to do when we're bringing people in, there were men that were involved too. It wasn't just, for women. So that, I had two women and one guy on my roster.
After Head Over Heels closed, did you land another show after that?
Interestingly enough, yes. The night of our closing party, Tom Kitt came up to me and said, "Hey, I have another show for you." I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. Wonderful news. What?" So Tom Kitt did all the orchestrations and was the music supervisor for Head Over Heels, just to tie that together. And he was at our closing night party and he pulled me over to let me know that. And he gave me the time frame, we'll get in and we'll do some work, we'll do a lab in May and then we're going to go out of town and the show's going to run at the Emerson Colonial in November and then we'll come to Broadway in the new year being 2020. And we got to May and we got into New 42 and we were doing work and about 4 days in, they had canceled a rehearsal day, which I thought was weird. And then we were asked to come in at 3:00 on one day, which was really weird and never thought anything of it until they told us that the show was being canceled. There were creative differences and the show was being scrapped. So there went my show. And I was like, oh man, easy
What
come,
show
easy
was
go. Magic Mike.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yep.
Oh man, that sucks. But that was in
Yeah.
spring of 2020? Was it March 11th?
It got kiboshed in the spring of 2019.
Oh, 2019.
It was going to run at the Emerson Colonial in Boston in November of 2019 and then look to come into Broadway early 2020. So, I mean, who knows, what would have happened at that point. I mean, we know what would have happened if we'd been open.
Right.
We wouldn't have been open for long. But, that was a really good learning experience for me, thinking that you have a show, this is amazing, and then it doesn't happen. And it happened to me, I was going to do an off-Broadway show during that summer, a limited run of an off-Broadway show, and the same thing happened with that. Oh, the producers didn't get their money. The show's not happening. And we had a theater, we had a move-in date, like it was happening. I had the charts, like it was, game was on as far as I knew and for whatever I thought. So, I think that happened. I think I lost those two shows within about 3 weeks of each other.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Must have did a number on your psyche.
Like, is it me? Did I do something? No, I'm just teasing. It was, but another, learning about the industry, that these things happen, probably more than people think they happen, so.
Yes, all the time.
But then Little Shop came around, a couple months later. And then later that year, I got called to do Kristin Chenoweth for the girls at the Nederlander for a couple of weeks. So, two things went away and two new things came my way. So
tell me about Little Shop. How'd you land Little Shop?
one of the contractors reached out to me and said, I think you should take a meeting with this orchestrator and music director who you don't know and he doesn't know you, and he's looking to kind of broaden his network of people and work with some new people. And he'd like to meet you. And are you up for that? He's working on a new show. Didn't know what it was, didn't know anything about, nothing was mentioned. I said, yeah, great, would love to. So I went into the city and had coffee with Will Van Dyke. And Will was like, great. It's a little shop of ours, and it's going to be at the wet. And he went through all the stuff, and we start, rehearsals next month, and in August, blah blah blah. Are you into it? I was like, absolutely. So that was that.
And that opened when?
That opened. We started previews in September of 2019, and we opened October of 2019. Officially. Opening night, yeah. Yep.
Wait, October when?
October 18th or 19th, I think, was our opening date, or 17th, somewhere around there.
Okay. And it's been, it was going strong, and of course everything stopped. And now it's back, and you guys are doing well, thankfully.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
And in your experience working at Head Over Heels, even though you didn't actually make it to Magic Mike and the other things that you worked on, but in the past shows that you have worked on, what do you think is the most important thing that a drummer should know about playing shows?
The most important thing that you should know in playing a show is that no two shows will be the same ever. And I know that sounds like a really simple, obvious thing, because I guess with live music, no two shows are ever really the same. But I think with Broadway, there are so many moving parts, and there's so many layers to a show that it's beyond you as a musician and your band and your orchestra. I'm saying band. My little shop, there's 4 of us, so that feels like a band, not an orchestra, right? Small numbers, but there's just so many moving parts, and it's really, really unpredictable in that way. And you can never get complacent. You can never get comfortable and think, oh, I got this, because this is, I've done this, been doing this for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. It's not that simple. It's never that simple. It might not be a challenge in terms of a major catastrophe every time you go into play, but there are enough subtle differences or potential wrinkles or things, little curveballs that come your way, that you always need to be on your toes for.
What do you think a drummer should never do while they're in a pit?
They should never think that they got it. They should never think like, I've done this enough that like I'm cool, because for what I just said, it's going to be changing all the time. And you can never get comfortable. My opinion. You might disagree. You're far more of a veteran than I am. But I think when you start to, for lack of a better term, phone it in, right? You get really complacent or get really comfortable, is when you get into trouble. You take your eye off the prize. You look off your chart. Your mind goes somewhere else. Then all of a sudden you go, oh man, wait, where am I? Crap.
Yes, that happens. It happens. You have to pay attention, because
you have to pay. I mean, I know that's, again, like you're stating the obvious, but okay, I'm going to be honest. When I toured, all the years that I toured, there were times on tour when we were in a new market, and maybe there were like a bartender and a doorman and 2 people in the bar, and you kind of phone it in. Like your mind is somewhere else. You're thinking about, I don't know, you're thinking about getting off stage and, taking a couple of Advil because you have a headache, or you want to go watch the Yankees game, or you got like whatever, oh, the playoffs are now, I wish I could be, and your mind just goes somewhere else. But in that environment, for me, that was doable. It's not preferred, obviously. Okay, I'm making a confession. You never want to do that as a professional. You want to be in the moment, and you want to be focused on what you're doing and present and all of those things. But look, 260 shows a year, you're exhausted. That's going to happen from time to time. But it's easier to do it in that environment because there aren't so many moving parts, and there's not so much riding on what you're doing. And I take what I do extremely seriously. I'm sure you get asked this question all the time too, about how do you do the same show 8 times a week and not get bored and this and that, and doesn't it get so boring? And it doesn't get boring for me. I don't get bored by it. It's a challenge every night that I go in there because you're seeking the perfect show. And really, in terms of absolute perfection, I still haven't had it. There's always things you can do better. There's always things you can nail better. There's always ways that you can be better. Even playing exactly the same thing 8 shows a week, there's always ways that you can be better. And if you get away from that focus and you let your mind go somewhere else, you're going to be so far from that. And the people who are on stage, who the show is really about, I joke about this in some of the clinics that I've done, over the shutdown. I was doing a lot of remote clinics, talking about how my work as a rock player prepared me for Broadway. And I jokingly say, if you think that a musical is about you as a musician, you're wrong, because it's not about you. You're supporting what's happening on stage. It's not about you and blowing chops and showing off your fills and, trying to be the star, which you might be able to get away with in a band on a stage. But you can't do that in a Broadway show. That's not about you. People are depending upon what you're playing for every inch of their choreography, for everything that they do, for the phrasing of their vocal, for like every bit of minutia that they're doing on stage. You will affect that in every single way, in the fill that you do, and your dynamics, and all of it. So you can't take it for granted, and you can't take your eye off the prize. You got to be there. You got to be present.
Some people have said on this podcast, when they don't feel present and they don't feel 100% and they don't want to phone it in, they take the night off because they'd rather not be there than be there and phone it in.
Yep.
And even for myself, when there have been times where I feel like phoning it in, I got to make sure I refocus or take the night off. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be here tonight, and I'm not fully there, because like you said, there are times where I might hit a snare drum fill, and that triggers the lighting cue, which triggers automation to come on,
right,
and the spotlight to come on. And if I'm just like, thinking about, man, I can't wait for tomorrow, I'm going to cook some fried okra, and like, no, you can't do that. You can't start thinking about fried okra, even though I don't like okra.
One thing you can never do in the pit is think about fried okra, Clayton.
That's going to be a quote from me. Stay away from fried okra. It's bad for your heart anyway.
Right.
So, Little Shop of Horrors. Mm-hmm. Do you use your own drum set for the show?
I do. I have a mix. I have electronics as well. I am triggering Ableton. I am running Ableton for the whole show. So extra special reason to never think you can phone it in, because you take your mind out of that and you miss a cue big time. So so I have like an SPD pad, and I have foot switches and all that stuff. But yeah, I have my own gears in there.
Where did you learn Ableton? Because I am unable, because I don't know how to use Ableton, but it's a skill that a lot of pits might require. Tell me about Ableton.
I will tell you all that I need to know, all that you need to know. Sorry. No, not really. My first exposure to Ableton was through an online class that I took through Berkeley, I believe, many, many moons ago, because Ableton was just starting to be a thing. And I took some online classes, and I didn't really feel like it gave me a whole lot of information, but at least like some of it made sense to me, right? And I never used it again beyond the class. So I get called, Will was talking to me about Little Shop and Ableton and whatever. And of course, my hands started to sweat a little bit at the thought of all that responsibility and having to do all that. But I knew enough to know, that I wouldn't have to program it, which is really the super hard part. You really need a certain skill set for that. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that, nor did I have to. So that was cool. B, from my experience at Head Over Heels, knowing what it was like to be in the rehearsal room day one of rehearsals, the focus is not on me. You know, the music director is focused on the actors and the singing and the ensemble and all of that stuff, and not so worried about, am I playing the ink, or did I miss a kick drum note here, or did I miss a crash? That, you know, that wasn't his focus. So I knew, and just the nature of rehearsals where you're on one number maybe for 2 hours, you know, or whatever the case may be. So I knew that I would have time in the rehearsal room to get comfortable with the rig before getting into tech, before getting into, you know, all that stuff. And I just committed to the fact that I would learn how to do it and I'd be okay. And I was. So that's how I learned, was really in the rehearsal room. I didn't have any prior experience, you know, running it or being able to trigger it or doing any of that stuff.
So in the Little Shop Orchestra, the Gang of Four, as
The
opposed
Gang
to
of Four.
the Antigone Gang of Five,
Mighty gang.
you're triggering a click track. You're triggering sounds.
All of the above. Most of it is on click. There are key two parts. There is percussion. There are some sound effects.
Wow.
So like the top of Act Two, for example, the number is called Call Back in the Morning, and Audrey and Seymour are doing this bit where the phones are ringing in the flower shop and they're like answering the phone. And so all the phones that are ringing are coming from the Ableton. No pressure there when you miss a cue and they're picking up a phone and it's not ringing because you screwed something up, you know? So these are the joys. But yes, so it's kind of a mixed bag of stuff that's happening through the Ableton.
It's interesting you talk about playing the same show every night, but trying to get it right. I recently recorded audio versions of the show for my subs that are going to start coming in for Ain't Too Proud. And when I started recording myself, I was like, okay, I'm going to get the entire show perfect to give it to them. But then you start making little mistakes here and there. You're like, damn, I could have done this better.
Itty bitty, right? Just
like the
little,
end of at the end of the song, I was like, I'm going to get this feel. I'm going to get it. And then you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And you screwed it up. But, you know, there are times where sometimes I listen back and I'm like, oh, my God, that sounds great. But you want to try to do the same thing the same way every night. And sometimes it's just really difficult to do. But it's a challenge to try to get that level of consistency the same every single night.
Absolutely.
Which is something I'm sure that you do every single night at Little Shop. Absolutely.
I try, you know, I that's my goal for sure. My focus is always there and trying to nail it. You know, something as elusive and silly as like I have two wood blocks off to the side, and sometimes it's like a blind hit because I don't know, turning a page and like the stick will just slide off a little bit and I don't get a clean hit in the center of the wood block. You know, something that's, you know, silly. It's like, there goes my perfection, you know. Yeah. It's like, oh, wood block.
wood block foils you again. You have your drums in the pit. Are you using Pearl drums?
I am.
I see you have that Pearl shirt on.
Yes, this is brand new. Isn't it sweet?
I love that. Very similar to this one.
It's nice. I know. Got the baseball, the baseball jersey kind of thing going on, right? The stripes. Yeah, very Pearl. Cool. The shells are, for all you gearheads out there, reference Pure shells. Music City Custom I have the wraps. So they are, actually, I used them at Head Over Heels. The show had purchased 2 drum kits because I had one in the actual pit room where I was all by myself. And then there was one up on stage that I would have to run up 2 flights of stairs for the reveal at the end to get behind that kit. That's the one that I bought from the show. And it's sort of like a vintage orangey sparkle, orangey gold kind of a sparkle thing. It's cool. 5-piece, 10, 12, 14, 20-inch kick. So it's a little bit of a smaller setup.
You have do you have endorsement with Pearl?
I do. I'm a Pearl artist. I also endorse Zildjian cymbals, Evans drum heads, ProMark drumsticks, drum tacks, Sledge Pad. Are you familiar with Sledge Pad?
No.
It's a really great kick drum dampening system, and it's vented. So the way that the foam is vented and the way that it sits, it allows airflow, but it also gets rid of the extra, annoying possible resonance frequencies, whatever. So that's a really great product. SKB cases, Ultimate Ears, and Big Fat Snare Drum.
Ultimate Ears. Tell me about Ultimate Ears. Do you
My
use
in
that
ears, my
on the show?
fitted, my yeah, I use in ears. I have just because of the Click and Ableton situation, I had them set up for me in my booth when we did our seating. I did a second Aviom, which for those of you who don't know what the Aviom is, it's sort of our monitoring system. We plug headphones into that and we can dial up our mixes for whatever we need through the Aviom. And I had them do a secondary one to my right, and I have a pair of traditional cans, isolation headphones plugged in and ready to go in the event that anything were to happen with my primary, either my primary Aviom or my in-ears, my buds. I could rip them out and just grab the cans and go, and there wouldn't be an interruption, hopefully, with the Click and all that stuff. So yeah, so I use my in-ears there, and I use them for other live gigs wherever I can use them if there's the opportunity to do that with a power pack and all that stuff. That's just my preferred way. I like to isolate as much external stuff as I can.
Well, this is all going to be new for me because I recently connected with Empire Ears, and I'm getting my first set of in ears in another
Nice.
couple of weeks. So
Great.
are they like night and day from like the at the show that what I have now at the show? They're Shure. I don't know. I forgot what model number they are, but is it like night and day?
Well, do your current cans isolate the external? Do you get like a lot of drum isolation, or do you get a lot of bleed through your cans? Do you hear a
No,
lot of
it's
yourself?
it's pretty isolated, but I understand when you get molds and it goes right in your ear, it's gonna sound a lot better.
Yeah, it's nice. I prefer it. Plus, I get my ears get bothered when I have stuff when I have the cans over my ears, and because I wear glasses to be able to read my charts, having an external mechanism pressing into my head, it bothers me after a little while. So the in ears are just easier for me. I don't have any of those issues with my glasses or that my ears getting sore or any of that kind of nonsense. So it's a preferred setup for me personally.
When since you come from the rock world and you're playing songs that you have to have memorized in your head, you don't have charts. It's not very rock and roll to have charts. The Antigone Rising stage. You wouldn't want to be playing with, opening up for Aerosmith and having charts. It's not cool, man.
So not cool.
Especially if you got, your gang going up there. So, did you memorize Head Over Heels after a while? Did you memorize Little Shop? And do you keep the music up there for reference, or do you actually read it? What's your mode of operations in a pit? Do you memorize or
I
do you watch the music?
I just from doing it over and over again, obviously you will retain a lot of that. I didn't make a deliberate attempt to get off book, to go home and work on it so much that like I could memorize it and get off book. For me, because there are so many, because of said moving parts that I referenced earlier, vast amounts of moving parts, I find it possible and maybe even likely that something could happen at any moment to sort of throw you and jar you. And that could, again, this is just me. If I'm trying to, be off book entirely, it could throw me to a point where I might feel vulnerable without having my ink in front of me. So my charts are always up. Some moments I do have memorized and I'm not reading, I'm just playing, but it's open and it's there. So it just really depends on the tune. It depends on the moment. It depends on the section or the passage. What I'm playing. If I feel like I need to look and be focused on precision. I might want to take my eyes off to make sure that I'm like the wood blocks that I mentioned or something like that. I have to get to a triangle, even though I'm using my Miller machine. I still have to look to make sure I hit it in the right spot and all that kind of stuff. So there is a certain element of knowing it well enough to be able to get your eyes off the book. And for subs too, like you should know what you're playing well enough that you can get your eyes off to check in with the monitor and check in with the MD, and get back to your ink. Like you shouldn't be a slave to that. You have to look kind of a thing every second. Not to say that you have to be off book to go sub a show. I just mean you should be able to go back and forth. You should know it well enough to be able to do some of that, especially moments where you need to get cues, right? So I just don't feel comfortable being off entirely, personally.
How far
A
away?
safety blanket.
How far away is the conductor from you in the pit?
Oh, he's so we're both. So the band is separated 2 and 2. So as you enter, we have to go up a crazy spiral staircase to enter the stage area, and you enter stage right. So directly above that staircase is a platform where the MD, who's playing piano, and the guitarist sit, and then directly opposite that platform, stage left, is a quick change booth, and they built a slight extension over the top of the quick change booth where my drum booth is, and the bass player, my bass player sits just outside of my little drum booth area, which is only, the doorway is really only 2 little curtains. It's not even a hard door. They had to build it out of like plywood and whatever. So it's we call it the tree house. We have to literally climb up a metal rung ladder to get to the platform. So we're literally opposite sides of the stage from each other.
One other question about Little Shop. On Broadway, I subbed for Rich Mercurio. It's one of the first few shows that I subbed. I remember the first couple of times the plant didn't work, or there was some
Oh
problems with
no.
they had to like stop the show because the plant, I guess maybe the mouth was open and didn't close. Is there a big plant on stage? Is it?
Oh, there's a big plant, and we have 2 puppeteers inside the plant doing it manually. They're actually,
Really?
yeah. There's like a 25-pound counterweight in the back of the big Audrey too, like the big, when it gets to its, end stage size, it's really big, and it takes 2 guys in there maneuvering that thing. One in the front, I think one in the front, one in the back, or I think they go front to back. It's bananas how they do that thing. It's crazy, but it's so cool. It's really impressive.
I need to come see that show.
Yeah, it's really great. It's a great production. It's, from what I understand, it's very, very true to the original.
I showed the movie to my kids in 2020, and I don't think I think they liked it. I thought they thought it was campy, which it was. There's certain, like Suddenly Seymour. I think that's this funny song where I forgot her name. Is it Audrey?
Yeah.
Yeah, when she starts singing, really kind of awkwardly, but it's funny. It's a funny show. It's dark.
Yeah.
People getting eaten. But anyway, in the blood. But anyway, we'll talk about the artistic quality of that show on another podcast maybe. Broadway Musicals by Clayton Craddock. Anyway, there were 5 women in Antigone Rising?
Originally, yes.
Okay.
That was the original. Our original lineup was 5.
There are 5 in Antigone Rising, your gang. If you had 5 drummers to form a gang, what are your 5, top 5 drummers of all time? You were going to put them against?
I hate this question. I'm just going to say it.
Why do you hate the question? I'm curious.
I don't know. It's because it's such a subjective thing, and people get all bent out of shape and all worked up over, how could you pick that one? Oh, he sucks. It's like, ay.
Well, before you go on, I'll tell people my top 5 are Tony Williams. So now,
That's well done. I like that. That's great.
So there's no
Well,
argument there.
so clearly for me, Karen Carpenter, Ringo, Steve Smith, um, Steve Gadd, and again, it's just I don't know. I could easily go Jeff Porcaro. I could easily go Bonham. I could, it's just I'll say Jeff Porcaro.
I mean,
Just
how can you
because.
choose him?
I know.
I'm just kidding.
You're out. This is over.
Exactly.
We're done.
End button.
Click.
I'm not even gonna publish this motherfucker.
So yeah, it's so hard though. I mean, I grew up. I listened to a lot of Billy Joel as a kid. I loved Lib DeVito's stuff. That was hugely influential for me. I loved Martin Chambers. The Pretenders were like, oh my God, just unique, great rock stuff. So it's a hard question. It's like, who do you think are the greatest? Who are the most influential? Who are the most important? It's like flip a coin. There's a lot of really great ones out there. So, but those are my 5 for now. Today.
Until tomorrow, they might change. That's great. So are you working on any projects at the moment, musical projects or any other kind of things?
No musical projects right now. I had done a couple of readings of a new show prior to the 18-month, lockdown. So we'll see if that resurfaces at any point. I hope it does because it was really a lot of fun. And then just, freelance stuff around town. I'm doing a fundraising event at Cipriani Monday night, and just other gigs. I did something at Bitter End last week and doing some mentoring and home recording and just, a mixed bag of stuff, staying busy. So like we all do, I imagine.
Where can people find you on social media?
I'm not even going to give you Twitter because I'm the worst with Twitter. I can't. I don't like that forum at all. It's just not right for me. But I'm on Facebook and Instagram and at Dina Tauriello, and my website is dinatoriello.com. So you can reach me there. There's a direct email option if anybody has any questions or wants to say hi or wants to yell at me for my choice of drummers, that's where you can find me.
They could say, I can't believe you picked Joe Porcaro. Jeff Porcaro, not Joe. You did say Jeff, correct?
I did say Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know much about Joe, but I know he was a great teacher.
Mm-hmm. Right. Ditto. I'm with you on that.
All right. I guess I always say this all the time. One last question. Do you play softball still?
No.
Not at all?
No.
You can't. I mean, not throwing the ball, but getting up and hitting a few balls. No, never, really. Oh,
nope.
Man.
Nope. I haven't done it in a really long time.
Is it because you might get injured, or you just have no passion for it, or you just like?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess if I could come across a legit batting cage for fast pitch softball, I might reconsider. But I don't know of any that are near where I live that would make it easy for me to do that. I suppose with a little effort I could figure it out, but I don't know. It just feels like the ship has sailed.
I was so fascinated by this fast pitch softball over the summer. I'm going to come pick you up. We're going to go find a place and you're going to show me. I'm going to get you back in the game.
Good luck. Probably pull a muscle 2 minutes in. They'll be like, oh.
We're both going to be out like, oh, my God, I've got ice pack on my shoulders. Oh, man. Well, it was very nice talking to you. Thank you for being a part of my podcast for the second time.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.
Yes, I always like talking to you. And ladies and gentlemen, people can reach Dina at her website. She's an amazing player. Go see her show. Check out her stuff on her podcast. And do you still do clinics at all?
I do, yeah.
Great. You can follow her there, and she won't be on Twitter, so don't look there. And I tell you, I need to
Definitely
get
not
off
there.
of that too. Twitter's it's like a wasteland. It's a sewer, man. But
It's
anyway,
just all insane. I mean, I do it with the intention of, like, connecting for work and business related things, and it just becomes sometimes more aggravation than it's worth, truthfully. So anyway.
once again, Dina Tauriello, Little Shop of Horrors, and many other great things in the future. Thank you once again.
Thank you.